Wow. Episode 11 of Heavenly Delusion was absolutely fantastic. So much to talk about in this episode, and I love when I get episodes like that. Just, okay, where do I start? The first most important thing, let's get the important thing out of the way, but yes, Mimihime has been confirmed as having animal ears. I seen some people kind of whispering about that, and I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. It looks kind of like that, and yeah, pretty much this episode, for some reason, every shot of her, she had to have either somebody yanking the ears or the ears are moving themselves, so it's like, why didn't we ever show that before? Just suddenly out of nowhere, we're just like being very clear she has animal ears, which, yes, doesn't shock me too much because a lot of the characters have, at least in the academy, have some sort of oddity about them that makes them appear to be something different. I mean, we get a sense that some of them even have like elf-looking ears. I mean, even Asura is literally an alien of some sort with long pointy ears. So it seemed like everything was sort of based on that concept. So again, it doesn't surprise me at the same time. Another reason why I like Mimihime and why I'm still heartbroken. And yes, this episode was another confirmation of the fact of her tie-in with Usami and the fact that that was her in that episode. So really sucks once again to get that heartbreak happening, but so much more really kind of detailed around her. Yes, we had the 5th years have finally arrived inside of the academy, or at least in this area, and it didn't go as bad as I thought it was gonna. Like, I mean, based on that last shot in the previous episode, I thought that these kids were gonna be like nothing but snots, but a lot of them having fun. Now, I'm sure that eventually they're gonna start showing their true colors, and we're gonna start having like a bunch of conflict happening, but at least for now, it seems like they're all good kids. They're all having fun. They're playing with Mimihime. They're riding her like a donkey because she has these donkey ears. But yes, we confirm that, in fact, Tokyo is having the kid. Now, the interesting thing that we have in this little segment is more the fact of her connection to Kona. Now, we've always sort of emphasized that Kona's ability has been to manifest things in his mind. That's what happened with this previous, I think it was actually the previous episode, or maybe a couple episodes back, where Kona was with Asura, and he was imagining something, and then suddenly somebody got hurt. So it was kind of implying there that it wasn't what he drew came to realization, which everything that he's drawn so far seems to be some man-eater elsewhere, but in fact what he thinks about comes to being. But in this episode, it sort of implied that there was something else. Now, again, it might not be Kona. Kona at some point is, you have Tokyo over here, and she's giving birth, and Kona's over here, and he's in pain. And at some point, he says that he is connected to Tokyo and knows that she's fine now. Now, again, it might be that Kona's ability is to manifest things from his mind, whereas Tokyo's ability is to connect with people, connect with them emotionally. And maybe she subconsciously just connected to Kona, and that's why he was feeling her pain. And it sort of implies the idea that maybe even by chance, he was able to carry part of her burden, part of the pain. The reason why she's able to get through it is because she gave some of that pain to him. Again, I don't think she did it intentionally, but she did that. And so I think that's going to be pretty much her sign of what Tokyo is capable of doing. That's going to be probably her ability, which, if we go into the theory, the idea that Maru is one of those children, which now, yes, we confirmed that there's 2 children, which we'll talk about that later. If we go into the theory, the idea that Maru is Tokyo's child, that would make sense of why he's able to touch touch the man-eaters and able to go inside of them and get to their core, because he's able to get inside of their feelings, inside of them, similar to Tokyo is able to connect to Kona. So, cool little kind of additional theory. Because we've had some people in the last episode was theorizing that the child of Juichi, his child, it might be a child of the woman that died, and the woman that died became the spider, and that's why there was 2 beings that was able to freeze things, both the child and the spider, is because the spider was the mother when it died. Now, the only thing that kind of goes against that is that my theory on that whole thing is that they have to die from the disease. But that might be confirmation that they don't have to die from the disease. They just have to die maybe having the disease, but not die from it. Additionally, Kona specifically says the child will be born. So it sort of implies here that Kona already has some sort of prophecy given to him. And I think that was something that I was theorizing with Asura, is that Asura was the one child that had all the abilities. Because Asura was doing a bunch of stuff, and it sort of implied that all the other kids only have one ability. So Asura can probably possibly see into the future, can fly, can manipulate gravity, can manipulate objects, all these things that Asura can do. And I think that Asura probably told Kona at some point, you're going to have a child with Tokyo. So Kona knew Tokyo's going to be fine. She's going to birth the children. Or it could be an aspect that he just, again, was connected to Tokyo and just felt it. It's done. It will be born. It's fine. But yeah, interesting stuff. And yes, Tokyo has the child. And that's when we jump to the director. And this is where we finally got confirmation about everything around seemingly what this facility is doing. The director, in this conversation with Sawatari, confirms that yes, these children are being built to overcome something. Like they're constantly, I mean, this entire episode, they're confirming that outside of this facility, this heaven, this academy, things are crap. And so they're trying to create children that will be able to survive that. So they're kind of implying that things are already going to hell outside. But specifically, she's mentioned the idea that, yes, she is looking for her next body. So right here, like I said, is confirming what I was kind of talking about before, where you had this big board of directors, this big meeting, and they're talking about the children. What is their interest in the children? It's not just to create the next children that will survive in an apocalypse. It is children that will be their vessels for them to go inside of. Obviously, a lot of rich people paying into something before an apocalypse, they're wanting bodies. They're wanting something to go into to survive this apocalypse. And so, yes, this is a big farm for bodies to be put inside of. And not only that, but the director herself is even looking for one, claiming that this new child from Tokyo can be the one that's going to overcome this illness, the one that's going to be the one that's going to survive. So it's the one that she wants. And she's not going to make 13 years because they have to be 13 years old. So she's going to go inside of Aoshima first and then into the director. And this is already sowing a seed of issues because we've already kind of established that Sawatari and Aoshima are a pair. So this is pretty much triggering an uprise. And this is where we're probably going to get into what's going to cause this whole system to fall apart. Now, the curious thing is that based on the later part of this episode, it seems to imply that Mina, the center of the facility, the robot, the core, the one that's birthing these children, that one seems to be triggering everything to start. But it at least seems like Sawatari and Aoshima at some point in this episode are planning something. They're standing together, they're talking about, okay, the director's out of here, let's go forward with our plans. When are we going to start? And Sawatari's like, well, whenever the gate just happens to open. And she's like, well, that's kind of vague. And then he leaves. So it sort of implies the idea that Sawatari and Aoshima are working together to at least just get the children out of here. It seems like they're going to be a party within this facility that wants the children to have their own lives. The director, she's creating husks for all these rich people. Whereas Sawatari and Aoshima, seemingly it seems like they care for the children more. So they want those children to just leave. Have their lives. Don't have their lives taken from them by all these people paying into this company. But again, it sort of seems like it's sowing a seed that there's a issue between the two of them. Sawatari really does seem to care for the child of Tokyo. And Aoshima does as well. So why is he being so short with her? Unless he's just very connected to the child. The only thing I can think of is either Sawatari is having doubts about, letting the children go. Maybe he's getting stuck in the idea of wanting to have a husk to be put into as well. Maybe he's fearing death, whereas Aoshima is driven by, a motherly protection and would be willing to sacrifice herself. Or is the child of Tokyo causing him to be obsessed with going in there and feeding the child? It seems like out of nowhere, he's like, okay, it's milk time. And it could be something that the child is affecting in him. But also this concept of them in this facility, this academy transferring brains, does play into the theory that Sakuta, whatever the other doctor, is somehow tied into this facility. He's done it before. So it's not too much of a stretch to see that Kiroko is a thing. He's probably done a transplant before. Also in the scene with Sawatari and the director, they said something very specific. And they said status of the combatants. After transportation, all 8 woke up from suspended animation. There's more than 8 fifth years. So I originally thought it was the 5th years they were talking about for the transfer. But I think the 8 is going to be, yes, some of the people that are paying to have a brain transplant into a body. But additionally, the director said something interesting. The prototype for their super beam is also ready. And then they went into talking about the illness. So it makes me wonder if the combatants are people looking for bodies to be transplanted into, and they brought this beam gun as sort of a trade. Or if possibly they're making some sort of deal with the aliens. I'd assume it's going to be just a rich group that has a weapon, and they're trading that weapon for bodies. Yes, that's when we get into Mimihime and her run-in with one of the kids, specifically Oma. which was what seems like she was blind, but apparently it's that her glasses are covering up her eyes, which are her power. And so yes, when Mimihime comes up there and takes off the glasses, she's crying, and the girl just activates her power, and then all this crazy stuff comes out and starts stabbing the heck out of Mimihime. I was conflicted, like, is it really the facility? Like, she's triggering the facility to attack? And then as it shows these images in Mimihime's mind, I'm like, there it is. Confirmation. I mean, there's no doubt anymore that Usami and that other girl was Shiro and Mimihime. Because the visions that she's having at that point is this trauma that hasn't happened yet. Kind of mentions that when she talked to Kona. I seem to have a fear of, blades and stuff like that. I don't know why. I've never had experiences with them, but she can see the future. And so she's seen her own future. She's seen the future of her being cut up into pieces because, again, Usami had to take Shiro had to take parts of her off to avoid the disease. But additionally, it sort of confirms here of who Oma is. And this makes sense, again, to the overall story, and it makes it hurt more. Can you make Usami, his story, hurt more? Can you make Shiro and Mimihime's story hurt more? What this scene right here is implying is, yes, it's confirming that Mimihime is this girl later on that's going to get chopped up by this doctor, which is Shiro. But it also confirms that Oma is going to go with them. So Shiro and Mimihime are going to be traveling with Oma. Because it's already established in this episode that Mimihime and Oma have a relationship. Mimihime is the only one that doesn't hate Oma. And so every time Oma sees Mimihime, she's super happy because this is finally somebody that is willing to accept this power that I have that causes them to see their worst fears. And so what happens when they go to the facility to meet Usami/Shiro? There was somebody in the parking lot. There was a man-eater in the parking lot. That man-eater was Oma. So Shiro, Mimihime, and Oma traveled together. At some point, Mimihime starts to have problems, and so Shiro takes Mimihime and starts to cut off parts of her to keep that disease from overtaking her, and Oma at some point dies as well. And that might be the reason why Shiro knows that Mimihime is going to change, because Oma changed. And then once Oma changed, he locked her up inside the parking lot. And so now everybody that was coming in the parking lot was being attacked by Oma, because the man-eater in the parking lot was showing people these hallucinations. So it's like, it makes it hurt more. They all three were together. And then this fact of dying and turning to a man-eater was ruining them. It just makes this whole story around Mimihime even more tragic. It sucks. It sucks so much. Oh, my heart breaks. My heart breaks. Even though I know it's already done and over with. Like, Oma's done. Like, they're all passed on. But it still makes it all hurt. Anyways, yes, she passes out. She ends up in the infirmary. She sees Kona there. Kona explains that he's connected to Tokyo. Tokyo's fine. And additionally, she explains the fact that she's able to see things and that she has this phobia. And at the same time, as she's in her mind going, yes, I can see a lot of things, and it's happening right now. Confirms right here that Kona at some point is going to turn into a man-eater, which we could assume that they're all going to turn into man-eaters unless somebody takes them out first. But at least here it's saying she's acknowledging something's going to happen to Kona. At some point, Kona is going to die or something. It seems like it's implying a very gruesome death because there's just blood everywhere. But additionally, here's his form. He suddenly turns into a man-eater right next to her, and then she learns how to sort of fight off those images, which she ends up using for Oma later. So, again, another kind of foreshadowing that something's going to happen to Kona. Which I don't think we've seen that particular man-eater yet, so it's probably something in the future. But yeah, I did love the scene where Mimihime goes out and runs into Oma again. She's apologizing because she's caused Mimihime problems, but she just, again, Mimihime's got heart. She fights back the images, embraces her and everything. It's super cute. It was a super cute scene. It's kind of that sucky thing where, yes, some of these kids have abilities that are going to obviously cause pain to other people, and that's going to cause them to be isolated. I don't think anybody would hate Oma for any specific reason other than that. But that's enough for a lot of people to just not be able to be around her. That's an insanely terrifying ability. But yes, signs for what's to come. We had a couple scenes here. We had the scene where it seems like some engineers are working on something that the robot is telling them to do. They're building something. They're kind of implying this idea of, what are we even doing here? Like, what are we building? We're building a heaven, of course, but what's beyond that? And they're insinuating that, well, maybe it's to go beyond that as well. I mean, they'd assume that eventually we're going to expand from just this one heaven. And it seems to be right. Because as we cut forward, we have what seems like Mina is talking to the children, calls for a class. And it seems like based on the humans walking by, not the director or Sawatari or Awashima, but just some random adults walking by, that this wasn't seemingly scheduled. Mina, the robot, the system, has called the children to an assembly where it ends up telling them, you have a test coming up. And it's going to be a very long test. And it's to reach the outside of the outside. And to pretty much just trust your own instincts. Go the direction that you feel you need to go. That's the test. And it's your task as Hiroko. So we've pretty much right here confirming that these are all Hiroko. Which, again, we've pretty much been assuming that for some time now. These are all, in a sense, man-eaters. And when they die, they will become man-eaters. And that's going to be probably where they got the name from. Because it seems like these children believe that, wait, that sounds familiar. That sounds like they're using my actual name. Which would imply that probably the Hiroko name is probably from whatever being that they created these children from. So there's probably going to be this one being called Hiroko, and they were cloned from that being. And so that's why they would feel like, hey, that sounds like my name, because there's a part of them that is still from the original Hiroko. But yes, the system implies that they're going to run into their first problem soon, which my assumption is going to be escape. Or maybe the director stopping them from escaping, because it does seem like, based on the end of the episode, it's now. And how that's happening is it seeming that the central system, which is Mina, is shutting down. And possibly shutting down means that the whole facility is going to open up, and they can leave. But yeah, this is pretty much opening the door, pun intended, to that. We'll see in the next episode. It seems like this is going to be the big breakout. This is going to be the point which all these children leave the facility, and they're going to go out into this. Is it going to be already destroyed? Again, it seems based on what director's saying that there is a hellhole out there. It could be the collapse of society. Like, it hasn't quite happened yet, but because of the fears of what's to come, again, the 3 stories from Juichi, each one of them are based on some sort of truth. So we could be on the outside already hitting on the idea that aliens have showed up and everybody's panicking and causing disaster, and that'll eventually lead to the war, which will then eventually lead to the collapse. Whereas inside, it seemed like it's been peaceful this whole time because the director and everybody is trying to create children that will live throughout this whole situation. One other scene we had, because we didn't really have too much on Maru's side, is yes, at some point they're at they're outside the Ibaraki facility. At some point they see the facility's open. We get a quick cut over there where we see Robin. So we finally see where Robin's been this whole time. So he seems to be at some sort of plant that they're still running. What they're doing at the plant, that's gonna be the big question mark, but at least we finally get to see him. And then the final scene, yes, is the reveal that not only one child from Tokyo, but 2. And again, it kind of throws a little bit of shade to everybody that's been kind of stuck on this idea that Maru is the son of Tokyo, who is the other son. My theory, I would probably go on the idea that the other child could either be the facility, the academy itself, the director and everybody has cloned Tokyo's child. And so that's why there's 2 children. I don't think they could do it that fast, though. Unless they have some really crazy technology, that's a really fast turnout to make a clone child. My assumption is more on the idea that, yes, Tokyo had 2 children. She birthed them both. Now, granted, technically, I think they showed some of the shots of the stomach itself when they were using x-rays and stuff like that. And it only showed 1 child, but maybe they were side by side and you couldn't see them. But if it is 2 children, my assumption is that the other child will probably be Asura. Now, it doesn't look like Asura, but I think it is going to be the rebirth of Asura. Because my theory has been a while now is that, yes, Mimihime may see in this future. And yes, that these 3 stories that Juichi told were real. Again, aliens showing up, collapse of society, a meteor, and war. I think the aliens already showed up. Asura is a birth from that. Tokyo gets pregnant, births the next Asura. Asura turns into this bird that everybody's seen, is supposed to fight the aliens or the meteors, and then collapse happens. Anyways, again, like I said, a lot of crazy stuff to think about in this episode. A really, really cool episode, and it makes me really wonder what they're going to do with these next 2 episodes. We only have 2 episodes left. It's like, how can they wrap this up? But I'm super excited for it. Cannot wait for it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what's thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to this channel, make sure that subscribe button to get my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more and you like what you see here, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, and membership button down below. I greatly appreciate it. It supports the channel. It means so much to me. And y'all take care.